Good morning and welcome to the podcast. I am your host, Micaiah Young, and I'm so excited to be back on here today and just to have this opportunity. It's a huge blessing, and we are a few days away. By the time you hear this, actually, we will be into the new year. So happy New Year, and hopefully you had a great time, and hopefully you weren't drinking, you weren't doing a bunch of crazy stuff, but hopefully you were thankful to the Lord that he granted you a new year. You know, he doesn't have to do that for anybody. So very, very excited about that and excited for all that God is going to do in the 2025 year. It's going to be great. But I had a favor to ask you, if you wouldn't mind starting off this podcast episode before diving in. So what I've come to find is that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, the way that we can get the word out for the content that we're trying to share out to people is by commenting on the YouTube page, like on the post, if you're watching this that way, or if you could leave a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, just a way to get the word out to more people. I personally believe the guests that we have coming on here in the near future, the guests we've already have, I think has been a huge blessing, and I think there's a way that we can get that out there to more people. So if you wouldn't mind helping me with that, that'd be a huge blessing, and I look forward to doing more and having more guests on in the near future. So, you know, if I were to ask you today what kind of life you want, what would you say? The answers could vary from anybody to, I want to be a musician, I want my life to look like this. Like, how does you want your life to look like? And when looking, I was studying Daniel chapter number 5, and I was looking at the story of Belshazzar. Now, his grandfather, many of us all know, is Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was a life, first off, he was a life of pride. You know, he made everything about himself. You know, he made a golden image and said, I want everybody to bow down to me. I mean, how arrogant does that sound to say, I want you to bow down to a statue of me? So he dealt with a lot of pride. Even in Daniel chapter number 4, you have him saying, look at this Babylon. Look at everything. I built it with my own hands. I did this. And then instantly God casts judgment on him because you don't do things by yourself. God is the one that allowed you to do that and did it through your life. So it's not all about you. You're not the one that did that. But a lot of people go through life living like pride. So Nebuchadnezzar had that problem. Well, Nebuchadnezzar not only had pride, but he was also a picture. What was he a picture of? Well, a lot of scholars share that he's one of the biggest pictures and types of the Antichrist in the Bible, talking about making an image and worshiping the image. And there's so many other things that come along with that. But what is your life a type of? You know, not only do you have pride or you're making your life about yourself, but is your life a type or a picture of something? Now, you might say, man, my parents are so-and-so. I never want my life to turn out like that. But a lot of times our habits and the way our life looks can turn out like that anyway, because our habits in our life is not in correlation to what we say that we want our life to look like. So he had pride. There was a picture of what his life looked like, but he had a lot of preaching in his life. You have Daniel, who interpreted dreams and showed God in his life. You have Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego being delivered. And so, Micah, what are you saying? He had no excuse to why he shouldn't have lived a life that was glorifying to God. He had zero excuse at all. But you know how his life ended? His life ended with him being a beast in a field, eating grass and eating food like an animal would eat it. That's how his life ended. He ends up coming back to God at the very end, but that's how his life ended because of him making it about himself. And you think you would look at that and you would say, man, I don't want that life. I'm not gonna live like that because I know how that life ends. But the crazy thing is, Belshazzar in Daniel chapter number 5, his grandson, lives the exact same way. When you look at through Daniel chapter number 5, he's defiling the temple. There's profanity. There is just crazy sin used, recklessness in verse 2, a warning, and then there's a judgment. And he's living the way that he wants to live, making it all about himself. And out of nowhere, you've heard it. The hand comes out and writes on the wall, and he's freaking out. I would be freaking out too. If I'm just sitting here, me and James are talking, and the hand comes out of nowhere and starts writing on the wall. I think I'd be like, what kind of pizza did I eat last night? You know, what's going on here? And I would be rightfully scared and nervous. And so it was he. And they're trying to figure out, okay, what is this writing? How did it get there? What does it mean? and they're trying to get astrologers, they're trying to get people, and nobody knows. But they said there's a faithful preacher named Daniel. He's been around this whole time. He's been around for, I think he was like 60 years old at this point. And they said he's still around. He's been around for just helping out everybody. Call on him. He was there for your grandfather, Nebuchadnezzar. And so they call on Daniel, and he comes out and he says, your kingdom's ended. And you know what he does? He goes through the whole story of Nebuchadnezzar, and then he says, and you live like this, though you knew his story. You knew how his life ended, but yet your habits and your lifestyle literally followed exactly what Nebuchadnezzar's was. And yet you knew this. And now your life's ended. And you know what the crazy thing is? Sometimes you can make it back from a life of bad decisions, bad habits, but that does not mean that your family will. Nebuchadnezzar made it back at the very end. Daniel chapter number 4, at the end of Daniel chapter 4, right before Belshazzar takes over. But Belshazzar died the very first night of his kingdom by making the same mistakes that Nebuchadnezzar did. So you say, Micaiah, I can make it back, but who says that because of your life of bad decisions, even though you made it back, who says that your kids are going to make it back? And so what is the life that you want to picture? What is the life that you should be following? First off, Belshazzar, he should have lived a life of observation. His life should have been looking at someone else's life and saying, this is what I do not want. You say, Micaiah, I may not know what I do want, but you should know what you don't want. There should be a life that you see, a life of craziness and going out there displeasing God, that you should say, I see how that ends. And you know what the crazy thing is? The Bible is a prophesied book. Now, I'm not just talking about fulfilled prophecies with Jesus, but there is prophecies in here that tell you that if you make these decisions, this is how it's going to end. And so why not examine and observe the stories and the illustrations in this book, the prophecies that are being told, that if you live this way, this is how your life's going to end. And living our life of observation, saying, okay, how does this story end? I'm not going to live my life according to that. My habits are not going to live according to that. Because entering into the 2025 year, you're going to say a lot of things. You're going to say, I want to be a person that is, fit. I want to be a person that's financially set the way I need to be. But then your habits don't align to where they need to be. We talk a lot of times. We say, I don't want a crazy life. If I remember right, Pastor brought up the verse, the desire of the slothful killeth him. Like he's always saying, I want better. I want to improve. I want to live like Christ. I want to do all these things. And you might say, this is the person that I want to be, but then your habits are nowhere aligned to where they should be. He should have lived his life in observation. He should have lived his life in illustration. He should have looked at the way his life ended and said, you know what? I'm going to be an example of how God can use me in my life, and I'm going to be a right king. But he didn't do that. He should have lived his life in observation, illustration, but because he didn't, his life ended in devastation. And his life ended after one night, and he never made it back. Nebuchadnezzar made it back, but his family never made it back. And so what am I saying? We need to figure out and decide the person that we need to be and ought to be and line up our habits to that. If we were smart enough, we would look at fulfilled prophecy, what's going to happen if you live your life this way. If I live my life without God, this is what is going to be the result of that. If I live my life lying and deceiving, this is how it ends. And we should look at the end result and live our life in observation. The crazy thing is, we're constantly asking broke people for financial advice. We're looking at unhappy people and trying to figure out how to be happy. We're trying to get our advice from the wrong places instead of the right places, and living our life in observation, illustration, so that it doesn't end in devastation. And so as we go into this 2025 year, why don't we decide the person that we know we should be, being like Christ, all these goals that we want to accomplish, but that's not enough. We need to align our habits to back up what we say that we actually want. And not just say and speak all the time. Because if I were to ask you, do you want to be a bum? Do you want to be someone who's unsuccessful? You want to get divorced? And I just want to have the unhappiest marriage. And I want to become an alcoholic. And I want to become none of you would all say, I would want an unsuccessful life. But then our habits go that way. And they're not correlating to what we say we want. Because actions or words are cheap. Actions are what really talk. And so what is the life you actually want? And are you making habits to back that up? They did a study. There was 3 groups of people. In the first group, they said, hey, we want you to exercise more. That's all they told him, the first group. They went to the second group and said, hey, we want you to exercise more, but here is some reasons why. Like, here's the health benefits. They were just giving reasons why you should work out. Well, so the first group, just exercise. Second group, you need to exercise, but here's some benefits and reasons why you should. The third group, they said all of that. They said, you need to exercise. Here's the reasons why. But then with the third group, they said, let's make a game plan on when you're going to actually apply this and work out. Like a game plan every single week that you'll work out. The first 2 groups that I mentioned only worked out about 30%. The third group worked out 70 to 80%. Having a game plan and habits to back up who you say you want to be is actually what will change your life. It's not a matter of information, it's a matter of application. So as we're going into this 2025 year, you're going to make New Year's resolutions, you're going to make all these things. And what are New Year's resolutions? New Year's resolutions are habits that of a person we want to be. That's literally what New Year's resolutions are. You're writing these down saying, this is the person that I want to be. Financially, spiritually, all these different things. And you know what? There's other New Year's resolutions. I want to stop doing this. Why? Because you don't want to be that person. I want to stop smoking. I want to stop doing this. It's habits based on both sides. And what we need to decide to do is decide the person we want to be, allow our habits to line up with that so we can have a successful and fruitful life for the Lord and for our families, to lead the right examples. Stephen Curry, he went into the league saying, I want to be one of the greats. And a lot of people in the NBA do that. I'm not sure who all is listening to this watches basketball, but a lot of greats go into the league saying, I want to be one of the greatest. But talk is cheap. Stephen Curry said this, but then lined up the habits to lead up to this change. What did Stephen Curry do? Well, let's look at his habits. He shot 500 shots a day in practice. 14,000 shots a month. 168,000 shots for 15 years. Like, this is all happening. 168,000 shots a year for 15 years. That is 2.25 million shots, just all in preparation in his habits to make 3,800 plus shots in the NBA and become the greatest three-point shooter, in my opinion, that's ever lived. It's not just enough to say, I want to be this person, but are your habits actually aligning with that? I want to be a better parent. Well, where are your habits at to back that up? I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better wife. Are you actually writing a plan down in place and habits down in place to be able to actually accomplish these things? I want to read my Bible. I want to do this. And we write down goals. We write down habits. We write down all these things. But where's the game plan to actually walk these through? I think that's why I love the Bible reading plan. That's a checklist. I love it. Not that it's just a checklist, like we're just getting through it. But to me, it's like, okay, if I do this every day, like I just check this off, like this is great. This is keeping me on track because I would love to get more of the Bible in me. And do you realize by just reading, and there's so many benefits, I don't have time to get into it this morning, but by reading the Bible 4 times a week, the results are insane to have those kind of habits. Well, reading 3 pages a day, you get through 66 books in a year. Think about that. You say, if someone asks you how many books you've read this year, you could be able to say 66 books I read this year. People are going to be blown away by that. That's amazing. But people who read the Bible 4 times a week are less likely to experience loneliness, anger, destructive thoughts. They're less likely to have marital issues. They are 228% more likely to share their faith. I mean, 4 times as likely to get off pornography and not to get drunk. Prayer every day, that habit reduces stress. I mean, this is science that's saying this. Reduces stress, improves mood, increases blood flow, helps connection. I mean, all these habits, these right habits, will change your life if we actually apply them and we actually make a game plan for getting them accomplished. The percentage they say for accomplishing goals is way higher when we actually write down our goals, make a game plan saying, we're going to get this done. Not just a wish, not just a desire, but actually a game plan saying, this is the way I want my life to be, and I'm going to align my habits. You might say, as a Belshazzar, you're sitting here today, you said, I've looked at a Nebuchadnezzar's life, and I don't want my life to turn out like that. And nobody wants to say, I want to die. I just want to die like by God's hand and be judged like that. I don't think anybody would say that. But Belshazzar's life lived according to the life that was destroyed and what resulted in that. And you might look at it today and say, man, I don't want to turn out like so-and-so. But yet your habits, they're looking just like them. And so I wonder, as we're going into the 2025 year, you can look and say, this is the person I want to be, but not just say it. A lot of people talk, but say, I'm going to make a game plan for how I'm going to reach being that person. I'm going to read the Bible this much a day. I'm going to go to church. Going to church 52 times in 1 year, that's achievable. You know, I'm going to pray just 10 minutes a day. Just making right goals for the end goal. I want to be more like Jesus Christ. And I want to handle money better. I want to do all these things, these goals, deciding who you want to be and reinforcing that with habits to back up who you want to be. So that's what I want to share with you. Hopefully this was a help to you. This person was a huge help to me and encouragement to me because I truly want to be more like Christ. I want to be the person that my kids one day can look up to. My wife can look to and say, man, I want to be like him. And I was thinking of this verse, and we're going to end it like this. Paul said, follow me as I follow Christ. Are you the right example in your life that people can look to? Can you be Paul and say, hey, you can look at my life and you can follow me as I follow Christ? If I were to ask you, like, as you're leaving here today, is your life the type of life where you can tell people, hey, follow me? Can people do that? Can I follow you? And will your life result as me being encouraged, me being closer to the Lord? Or when you get by yourself, your whole life changes from when you're around other people? Can I follow you as you follow Christ? And so thank you so much for tuning in today. Hopefully this was a help to you. And I look forward to jumping in on the 2025 year. A lot of great stuff's going to happen, a lot of great guests, a lot of just awesome stuff. So if you wouldn't mind sharing this with more people, leaving a review like I had asked previous, that would be a huge blessing. And I look forward to trying to give you as much as I can to try to be a huge help to you as you grow closer to the Lord. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next time.